Thank you. I now call this regular meeting of the Board of Education to order at 7 p.m. Have the coordinator call the roll.
Mr. Rollins?
Here.
Mr. Scrivano?
Here.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Here.
Mr. Siegel?
Here.
Mr. Connor?
Here.
Ms. Stanford?
Here.
6 present, 0 absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you. We'll now take a moment of silence to be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we start each board meeting, it bears reminding that the mission of Rockford Public Schools is to collaboratively engage all students in a first-class education for a changing world. I would like to thank Connor and Rod, who are working behind the scenes to broadcast our meeting on Zoom and other media formats. And I would like to remind board members and everyone in the audience that we will continue to require masks being worn properly over mouth and nose, even when speaking into your microphone. But I would ask those that are speaking to speak close to the microphone so we can all hear you when you're speaking. So we will move on now to the petitions and communications portion of our agenda, where we invite the public to make comments. The First Amendment of the United States Constitution guarantees the rights of citizens to petition their government, as well as provides for freedom of speech. Also, the Illinois School Code requires that there be a time at regular and special meetings for public comment. Thus, we are following those mandates during this petitions and communications portion of our agenda. According to Board Policy 2.230, the public comments portion of the meeting is limited to a total of 30 minutes. The board will not respond to comments at this time. If it is appropriate, you'll be contacted in a timely manner by staff in response to your questions. In order to allow sufficient time for the business of the board and to conduct our meetings in an efficient and effective manner, we are requesting that you comply with the guidelines that are posted, and each speaker will be allowed no more than 2 minutes to address the board. It's not appropriate to address individual board members or individual administrators or discuss matters that would otherwise be confidential in such open meetings. And I believe you'll have a clock to help you with your 2 minutes on the timing. Thank you for your interest and your cooperations with our guidelines, and we have 5 speakers tonight who are all on Zoom. So I will ask Pamela True, are you there? Diane is the only one on? Okay. So I guess Diane Boone, are you there?
Yes, I am there. I'm here.
Okay, you may begin, Diane.
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Diane Boone, and I am a parent of a student at Wilson Aspire. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I sent you all a letter by email outlining my concerns about the closure of Wilson Aspire. To summarize, I feel that Wilson Aspire serves a unique group of students who need more support than is available at their own school, but less restrictive than that at a therapeutic day school. My son was at Guilford for 2 years before transferring to Wilson Aspire, so I've seen both programs firsthand. I've also toured the therapeutic day schools in the past. Wilson Aspire is a very unique environment. They have a very unique environment. They have a small class size, an occupational therapy room for exercise and stress relief, a life skills section complete with kitchen, laundry facilities, etc., a dedicated, safe outdoor playground, a quiet environment for education, community outings, and in my opinion, the most experienced and dedicated staff and subspecialty services like occupational therapy, speech, and adaptive PE. The students are able to better work at their appropriate educational level and get the educational support in a safe environment. Although I understand the need to be fiscally responsible, I'm asking the board to delay a vote on the closure of the school. I would like to research other options to closure, such as perhaps combining the Page Park transition program with Wilson Aspire or other options. I would recommend that the committee, including Wilson Aspire staff and parents, be put together to look into the options for keeping this valuable school open. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. I just want to double check and make sure there are no other public speakers on Zoom at this time. If you are, please let me know. Okay. Thank you for your interest and your cooperation with our guidelines. We will now move on to board member comments. Are there any board member comments at this time? Mr. Khan.
Yep. I have 2 annual things I do, and one I neglected to do at the time. So let me just say that on every Veterans Day, I always thank those who have served our country, and I know from our immediate family, if you will, of folks, I know of 3 people that I'd at least like to say thank you out loud: Mr. Rollins, Mr. Dotson Jr., and Mr. Bartel. Thank you for your service, and for all those who have served in uniform for the Rockford Public Schools. You have the sincere gratitude of the community. That's number 1. And the second is a little more personal, is that my daughter-in-law got me this Christmas tie, and every year I wear it. So I just had to say thank you to her.
You didn't stand up or anything and show it, or? No, okay. There you go. All right, got it. Very nice. Okay. All right, Mr. Siegel, you're next.
Thank you. Good evening. In a little while, we are going to bring a new community member to the school board, and I am very excited about this opportunity. We are going to add Denise Pearson, a really very smart, thoughtful, dedicated person I've known for a few years now, and she's, I think, going to make a great addition to the board. We had a great interview where we got to meet a couple of other really great community members too, and I think I should thank Tanya Bates and Mr. Julian Holt. They interviewed really, really well. We had, I think, 3 really super strong candidates, and I feel great about that. That we had such great people step forward, willing to serve the school board. That is great stuff. Also want to thank Shanika Kilpatrick and Vic Rivera for throwing their names in. They were unfortunately unable to make the interview, but I appreciate their willingness to step forward also. Thank you. Oh, this is also our last meeting of 2020. I don't think Connor can actually bleep me out, so I won't tell you what I think of 2020, but happy holidays to you all, and we'll see you next year.
Okay. Got to get better, right? Absolutely. I would just like to thank, board members get a lot of calls and emails from staff and community members and that, and, it's a pleasant surprise, I guess, when we hear that things are I got an email. I'm not going to single out this teacher, but it was a teacher at a middle school in our district who expressed significant positive experiences since we've made the switch to this adaptive pause, and I think I shared that with Heidi and Aaron, Dr. Jarrett, and it's exciting for me to know that a plan was put in place. And for this particular teacher, she's got more engagement, she's got better attendance. Things have been going very, very well for her. She's anxious to get all of her kids back in person as soon as we can do that safely. But it was just enlightening to me to hear a good, positive story about the challenging times that we're going through. And we know that our teachers and all of our staff that work with their students are working very hard. And we appreciate their efforts to engage their students and do the best they can under these unbelievable circumstances that we're dealing with as a world today. So it was good for me personally to receive that kind of communication. So I wanted to share that with them. Any other board member comments? Mrs. McCulloch?
Ken?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I did. Hey, I'm not sure how many board members participated today in the science piece on alternative energy with some of the students at Lincoln. But what a great opportunity to see what learning was like remotely for them as they did their presentations with their slide decks and their models, and how it was basically they were practicing what they were going to present to their teachers. And both of the students that I listened to were doing it on a tidal energy, different ways that they're using the ocean and the tides as an alternative energy source. Fascinating, great job by the teacher, and there was a parent liaison who was there putting it all together in terms of taking us in and out of the Zoom and the chat rooms. So what a coordinated effort, and I applaud the teacher and the parent and the students, and just really seeing this remote learning in action.
Great. Any other board member comments? Okay, if not, we'll move on to the superintendent's report. We have Dr. Vosberg here filling in for Dr. Jarrett, so I'll turn it over to Dr. Vosberg. We gave you the trick microphone.
Good evening. Thank you. Thank you. I would also like to echo some of the sentiments of our board members. I did prepare this in advance, so I'm not totally stealing David's ideas or Jude's ideas, but I did want to welcome our newest board member, Denise Pearson. I know we had many quality candidates to choose from, which I don't think is an accident. I think the board has done great work in stabilizing the leadership and stabilizing priorities for the district focused on students. And I've been a resident of Rockford for a long time. I've watched a lot of board members do this work, and I would say that stability is really important, and that's important to attract quality people to the board. So welcome, Ms. Pearson. Looking forward to you serving as well as our other board members and doing what's best for kids. When I'm visiting schools and talking to teachers via Zoom or in person, whatever the case may be, I'm trying to learn as much as possible about what's happening this year. As we all know, it's a very challenging year professionally as well as personally for many of us. And one thing I always ask is, what are you forced to do this year that maybe you should have always been doing? And that kind of sparks a good conversation and spins a positive light on some of our struggles. A lot of the conversation is around some of the use of technology. Many of the things we're doing with technology are things that would take a long time to get good at, and we've jumped into the deep end in the fall, and teachers are really navigating that well. And the use of technology and to engage students, to reach out to parents, to make the lessons more interactive has really, I think, created some new lasting innovation in our district, which I'm excited about. I also was invited to participate as a judge with the science class, Mrs. Griffith's class at Lincoln, along with Mrs. McCulloch. And it was very energizing to be a part of that. I watched two student presentations. One was on tidal wave, tidal energy, and the other on solar. And it was great listening to students and the research that they've done and putting together their case for the new alternative sources of energy. What was also interesting, going back to our newfound innovation, is around the use of Zoom and the ability for the school and the teachers and the students to all do this via Zoom pretty efficiently, and engaging our community partners. We had engineers from the community, from Collins Aerospace, participating as well, which is hard to do in person. It takes a longer time to get to the school and find your way through the classrooms and such. So the Zoom environment does create some opportunities that may have not existed before. So 2020 is almost over, and there's a light at the end of the tunnel. It's not a train, I don't think. And
Yeah, good.
I think we'll see progress, and hopefully we'll keep working hard together for better times. Thank you.
Okay, thank will now move on to report and action items that proceeded through the Performance Monitoring Committee. The first one is 5A, which is Board Policy 4.80, Operations, regarding audits, accounting and audits. Is there a motion and a second to approve this item?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Siegel. Any comments, questions, or discussion? None. I'll have the coordinator call the roll on the approval of item 5A, the revisions to Board Policy 4.80.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Item 5B is the Board Policy 4.90, Activity Funds Revisions. Is there a motion and a second to approve this item?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any comments, questions, or discussion? Being none, on the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of Board Policy Revisions for 4.90.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Item 5C is the recommendation from administration regarding Wilson Aspire. Is there a motion and a second to approve this item?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor, second by
Second.
second by Mrs. McCulloch. Comments, questions, or discussion?
Yes.
Go ahead, Mr. Connor.
I move to amend this to postpone the vote on this until the first regular board meeting in January, which is the 12th of January.
Okay, there's a motion to table this. Is there a second?
For the sake of discussion, a second.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Siegel. Comments, question, or discussion on the amendment? Mr. Connor?
Yeah, my original intention was to delay this a little further. I got some feedback from a board member and also from administration that the timing for the teachers at Wilson, if indeed it does close, would be very difficult given the process. So what I decided to do was, in order to give time for parents, staff, and any community that wanted to propose other things to have their time of feedback with the administration, I wanted to delay this vote. So that was the first thing. So that's why the timing is January. And I inquired of our attorney how I had to do this, and essentially had to move for this according to the rules. And so I'd asked her to maybe comment, but essentially, as far as I understand, I had to make that motion and then move to postpone it. I mean, I don't know if...
Mrs. Hoadley? Maybe. You got the trick microphone.
Okay. Where there's a will, there's a way here. Yes, according to Robert's Rules of Order, you have to have the motion on the floor before you can move to postpone it to a date certain.
All right, so that was clarification for me. So that's the way it had to come across. What I wanted to comment, my real comment, is that I've gotten a fair amount of feedback on the Wilson closure and some from staff. And I am not an expert. Let me just say that right away. And we do have experts, and we have good administration and staff in special education. But I think this is one where we need some time for people to feel that they really do have that input. And what I'll say is it's going to be a little challenging given the time of the year and how quickly things will come up in 2021. but I thought it was really important to give this option for people to provide their feedback. And that was the thing for me that was most important, that we listen to the people regarding particularly their students, so that they have a voice in that. So just being transparent on what was behind all this.
Okay, Mr. Siegel.
So if we take a vote on
The amendment to,
postpone,
right?
do we not get to actually discuss the item tonight?
Next, if it passes, it gets discussed at the next meeting. If it fails, then you can discuss it tonight.
So for the sake of actually voting on this amendment, would it not have made sense to have had some conversation on the item before we take a vote to postpone it?
You have the motion on the floor in a second, so now it requires a vote.
So may I ask another question about that? If we take a vote and it fails, is there an opportunity to remove that? Because, I'm bringing this up because I feel like we have the opportunity to have a conversation about the item that could be fruitful in deciding if we actually need to reschedule it.
It depends on which side. If you're on the, I'll have to pull the rules, but if you're on the losing side, it's my recollection from Robert's Rules of Order that you can bring it forward again, but I might be wrong. I have to check and see if I've got that reversed.
So it would be good to know that before we actually vote, because I'm hopeful that we will have a conversation on this item tonight.
So Ken?
Yes, Ms. McCullough, go ahead.
Well, David, would that be okay? I don't know if while she's looking up the rules so that you have an idea of where we move forward on this or not. I would like the administration to tell us what the downside is in waiting a month on making this decision. How will that impact teachers? How will that impact students and their IEPs and their placements? And I would say personally, I've only had 2 emails. There's 27 families there. But where are they tonight? I mean, they knew about it. We had people signed up to speak. They're not here speaking. They didn't have to come in. They could do it on Zoom. I'm just wondering where the groundswell is, and I do want to give our staff the best opportunity possible for reassignment. And so in addition to having Mrs. Lawrence maybe talk about what the downside would be from her perspective, to have Mr. Zediger talk about how it might affect the staff, and if there's anything else that Mrs. Detman would want to add. So Ken, could I cede the floor to them?
Yeah, Mrs. Lawrence has come to the lectern, so she can go first and address Mrs. McCullough's question regarding the issues related to a delay.
So she did bring up the staffing concerns. I'm going to toss it over to Matt Zediker just for clarity. I believe that the first displaced round is January 24th.
It's actually earlier than that. So the first displaced round for teachers for closed buildings would take place on January 7th and 8th this year.
Okay, so then our teachers wouldn't have their first choice in terms of a position.
Okay.
The other delay is in determining placement. So the way that it works, parents have 10 days to convene an IEP meeting, and these placements are going to be very challenging in terms of going through the IEPs and making team decisions. So they're not going to be a quick and easy 1-hour IEP meeting. These are going to take some time. Determining the placement includes where they're going to be in the supports and services based upon that placement. With 27 students, that's going to take us several weeks. And so not delaying then just delays placement. One of my concerns is our therapeutic day settings have been full in the past. And so if we're considering therapeutic day for some of these students, which we might be, the IEP teams might be doing, we would be maybe putting them at a place that wasn't as close to home as what we would like. The other part in securing placements is difficult. The other issue that we'll run into is it's right around January, February is when we start looking at related service staff and their allocations based upon projected student numbers at buildings. And so it's a very complicated matrix of social worker, speech language, occupational therapy, physical therapy, etc., that we have to build their schedules out of. And then we work with the building principals on that so that they get to keep the people that they want and move some people around and shuffle people as we need. So that also complicates some of that work.
Comments for Mrs. Lawrence before we go to Mr. Rollins?
I guess I'm curious, and I honestly don't know the answer to this. At what point did we make it public or let people know that we were considering doing this? I know I had an email out of the blue a couple of months ago, so there must have been some discussion, but I don't know that it was really official discussion, so I'm just curious what sort of opportunity we've given people to provide input.
The building principal sent an email to all of the parents and staff members early this fall.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. And telling them that this was under consideration?
Correct.
Okay.
Ken?
Mr. Zediker, did you
Yeah,
have more to add to
I would
that?
just add to what Mrs. Lawrence said around staffing. We typically have advertisements for positions for next year. So our first in-building advertisement will be right when we return from break on January 4th and 5th. The displaced round, which would affect these Wilson Aspire teachers, would be on January 7th and 8th. After that displaced round, then it goes to a posting for all REA members, and actually our hard to fill positions, which special ed is considered hard to fill, then gets advertised outside of Rockford into all applicants. So it will impact the Wilson Aspire teachers' ability to take a look at which jobs are available at which locations and choose those specific jobs. If we do delay in January, that would push that process back, in addition to the other allocations of other staff members that we have to take a look at the buildings.
Okay. Mrs. Detman, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I don't think so. I think they've covered
Okay.
it. Thank you.
Any questions or further comments for?
Ken?
Yes, go ahead, Jude.
So, with the information that parents were notified in the fall, with the fact that we talked about it last week at the committee of the whole, we're talking, there was an opportunity for comment tonight. We only heard from one parent. And with the risk of our teachers not having the best opportunity to move where they would like to because it would be filled, or for students not being able to get where they want to go because they might be filled, I initially, when I had a conversation, and Mr. Connor and I did, I thought the 12th they would still be able to have entry into that displaced category, but it being prior to the 12th, I no longer think that that's in the best interest of our teachers. So to support staff and to support the students' best interest, I'm going to vote no on this to table it till January, and hope we can have further discussion tonight. I will say from a process standpoint that as a board member, I think the rest of the board members, even though that I had known this was in the wings, probably because of my conversations regarding special education, but I don't think even board members were all aware of what was happening and what the move was. And so from a process standpoint, it would be positive that the administration had more open conversation with board members. But here's where we're at. And so I just wanted to give reasoning why I won't support to postpone.
Okay. Mrs. Holder, you had your light on.
Yes, so the person on the prevailing side may bring a motion to reconsider.
I do in fact remember there being discussions, because we got some early feedback on the closing of Wilson, and clearly am concerned about teachers' opportunities, but I think the one thing I want to say is that I don't know how quickly those positions get filled, so I really, from my view, that I would say on the process side, I don't know how it was worded, and I really can't comment on the fact that it's just now coming. And I looked, and I had 5 emails that I don't think it's the number. I think from my point of view, the process is what really should take precedent. And it just seems like even if it's a smaller group, and again, let me emphasize, I think that the administrators have done a good job going through the detail. And let me be clear about one thing that was said in passing, but we did have one communication. This is not, and I mean not, about cost cutting. So anybody that thinks that that's the driver for this, that is 100% wrong. And that really, that might be a side topic. This is about students, children, and what is in their best interest. So I want to say that. And so I have confidence that what was driving the administration was what is in the best interest of the student. I think for myself, being a layperson, is the reason. There are some downsides, to be clear, but I really think that it's important that maybe it just really hit people. Maybe it's that the implementation of this is not what they expected, but I think it's a reasonable thing for people who will be the ones that are most affected, that they have a little time to voice their concerns and see how that affects the implementation. And I recognize also that IEPs take time to be evaluated and that we have to vote first, and I understand the logistical problems. But this is a case where I think giving an opportunity, and sometimes it really does take an event for the feedback to come out. So I'm strongly in favor of this because in the end, I think there might be some effect on the teachers, but it's not like the door shuts. They have more opportunities, and I'll ask Mr. Zedeker to perhaps lay out the schedule for the other kinds of opportunities teachers have, number one. And number two, to at least comment on how easy it is to find and how quickly those positions actually close. So we can at least have that. But in the end, for me, this comes down to the fact that we have effective parents, and you're going to make decisions, and there might always be second guessing. But I would feel much better. We're just delaying it by roughly a month. So I think, to me, and they could come back to talk to this at the committee of the whole for more discussion and then a decision at that second meeting in January. And that, to me, errs on the side of more feedback from parents, staff, and community.
Mr. Zedeker, do you want to respond to the questions about the timeliness of filling the finding positions?
Yes, I mean, Mr. Connor is correct. We do have vacancies within our special ed department year in and year out. A lot of that depends on certification. So I don't know with our teachers from Wilson Aspire all of the certifications that they have. That obviously gives you more opportunities for more positions within special ed and other teaching vacancies. But year in and year out, we do have vacancies in various positions throughout special ed, whether that's in our autism program or other self-contained programs that we have. So there are opportunities there. The The difference would be that with the displaced process, the teachers really get to choose, and if they're not part of the displaced process, then it gets into an interview process, a selection process. So that would be the major difference there.
Can I ask, but from the practical HR side, though, somebody might have to do more steps, but it's not like all of a sudden, bang, all those positions are closed.
There's going to be opportunities for vacant positions throughout the district.
Mr. Siegel.
Man, I wish that I'd thought through that second more clearly. To me, it feels like the parents who are most interested are most likely tuned in right now, and it seems like a conversation about the merit of this item versus whether we're going to postpone it or not would be an opportunity for us to share some information with people who are concerned. I think part of the concern is, there's uncertainty about how everything is going to look. Uncertainty makes people nervous. Do we want to sit on this for a month of people being uncertain about what the discussion is going to be? Or do we want to have a discussion about the item, and we can say on the strength of the discussion whether or not we actually want to vote to postpone or not? It just seems like we got things reversed. And if I thought a third would take away my second, I would throw that out there. But apparently we have procedures we need to follow.
Okay. Any other comments? Mr. Rollins.
Curious, to address Mr. Siegel's concern, could Mr. Connor withdraw his motion at this point? Don't roll your eyes at me.
Okay. You're asking, could Mr. Connor?
And then if he wants to remake the motion at the end of the discussion?
I know.
She knows she can't get it on.
Connor, could you come out?
I got it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just using his name, it's magic.
Okay.
You all have certainly done that in the past, and far be it from me to stop you from doing that way. My understanding was Mr. Connor did not want to have discussion on the main motion, which was, but I might have misunderstood that.
All right, well, I just threw it out there as an option.
Mr. Connor?
I'll be honest and say that, so I'm just saying the parliamentary part of this is, again, as a layperson, is really stupid. But, so, the intention was not to not have discussion on this, but when I asked, I said, well, what process should I use? It was to have an amendment to postpone it. And, I have nothing against the discussion. What I'm very concerned about is the timing. And I mean, I actually don't see why, and us talking about the timing, why we can't answer the stupid questions. And I use other terms, but my wife yells at me when I get home if I use other terms. But I really, it's like, we're touching our toes here. Let's just discuss it right now. I mean, I don't see why.
You can certainly suspend your rules.
So we have an amended
You've done that
motion
in the past,
on the
too.
floor.
I move to suspend our rules to allow substantive discussion on the underlying motion.
Second.
There's a second and a motion. Any discussion on that? Will the coordinator call the roll on the new motion to suspend? Okay, all right. Mr. Rollins moved to suspend the rules to allow us to discuss the topic of Wilson Aspire closing. Correct? Yep.
And to clarify, Ken, after we vote on this and we have our discussion, then we go back and vote on Mr. Connor's motion before?
Yes.
Okay. So we're only voting on being able to discuss it.
Right. Okay, so I have
Okay.
the coordinator then call the roll. If have to have a super majority, which with 6 board members means 5.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Stanford,
Yes.
Mr. Rollins,
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano,
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch,
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Now we have to have a vote on the amended. Okay.
No, now you have discussion.
Now we can have the discussion on the topic, okay? Right. We did, that's how we started.
All
That's
right,
correct.
so, starting with Ms. Lawrence, can you go through what the rationale is and what the plan is for what's being proposed tonight?
Of course. We have students at Wilson Aspire, grades 5 through age 22, who were placed there mostly because of behavioral concerns from their schools. We have about 16 students who are in what we consider a transition band. And what that means is that they've completed their requirements for graduation, the appropriate credits or similar credits because they're in an alternative curriculum, and they're ready to move to a more functional skill type of a vocational program. In the past, our transition program was not as stable as it is today. The opportunities for our students are much increased over the last 2 years. We have students that have been placed in jobs and are working today, some of which work for Rockford Public Schools. And so that is a tribute to the work that's been done in our transition program. So providing the opportunity for students at Wilson Aspire to participate in this program is what's best for these students. What they do at Wilson Aspire is they are in their classrooms with very limited vocational skill training, most of which is just rote work. We call them work boxes. Those work boxes are things like assembling screws and things like that. They're not getting a full opportunity. For some of those students, that might be their full opportunity, but we're not exposing them to any other skills or attainment. So looking at where we're sitting right now with Wilson Aspire, we have students that would return either to their zone school or they would be placed in a therapeutic day setting if that's the case, that they needed more support. We're looking at a classroom of 1 teacher, 2 paras, because we'll have 8 students. And then one of the issues with that is the students would range from grade 6 to grade 12. So that's a waiver that we would have to do with the state of Illinois to have that age gap within a building, which we do every year at Wilson. That's kind of the gist of it. Really letting kids be in the least restrictive environment as possible around their general ed peers is really important. We've seen growth in that area at all of our zone schools. The things that I saw at Guilford when I was the principal were amazing. The entire school came to see our special ed team play another special ed team from another school, and the gymnasium was packed. And they were, really rooting for each other out there. And so the things that I've seen in the zone schools to be able to support the needs that the students have by far outweighs keeping 1 classroom in a separate school that provides very similar, if not the same services as our zone school global program classrooms. I'd also like to mention, if I can, we do not have full-time related service staff at Wilson Aspire. We do not have full-time occupational therapy. We do not have full-time physical therapy. We don't have full-time social work or speech language services. We do, however, have that in our zone schools.
Ms. Stanford.
So let me make sure I'm understanding. So if we vote to close Wilson Aspire, when will the school be closed?
We'll leave at the end of the school year. Please correct me if I'm not right.
The end of this school year?
Correct.
Okay, but the teachers would have to...
They would be making their selection for the next school year. Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understood that.
And Ms. Lawrence, I think part of the opportunity also was that there are current vacancies in our zone schools, so there would be opportunities for teachers to follow along with their students to some of the zone schools where we have some vacancies to keep those relationships intact. Of course, it's teacher choice, but those opportunities would exist. And I just want to reiterate the point that, you know, this is coming up for a decision now because we're taking a look at all that's changed in the last couple of years to provide more opportunities for students and really take a look at the breadth and depth of their educational experience and ensuring that we're offering all that our district has to offer to all of our students. And that's really kind of at the heart of the rationale for this proposal. And so there's a lot of really good work. Ms. Lawrence spoke of two programs in particular, but also a position in the central office, the academy coach, who is specifically charged with providing inclusive environments and opportunities for all students in our college and career academies. So those are some of the key things that have changed since Wilson Aspire program began that really motivated the team to do a deeper dive and look student by student and ensure that we have the proper and most appropriate placement to give them all the opportunities.
So, Ms. Lawrence, you're the expert and your team are the experts on special ed. We are not. But I want to ask you to respond to this question. In your opinion, and the opinion of your staff, what is better for our students that fall into this category, being in a restrictive environment like Wilson Aspire, or a less restrictive experience like at a zone school, or I guess the other thing would be, or a therapeutic day, right? So in your opinion, what is the best for students?
Well, my opinion follows ideal rules and regulations that the least restrictive environment is the environment that you choose for the student.
Okay, can you tell us why?
Several opportunities, and most of it is integration with general ed curriculum to the maximum extent possible is how IDEA law is written. And so every time you back away from that placement, you have to determine as a team why you cannot serve that child within that setting with appropriate modifications and accommodations and supports. And so every time you back away from that placement, you have to prove per IDEA why you cannot serve that student in that placement. That helps?
Yep, helps me. Further comments or questions? Mr. Connor?
Yeah, could you also speak to the students where a more structured environment works for them and how that works given the new direction?
Sure. So our global programming has undergone some change. At our high schools, we have 2 classrooms at every school, and so that works out really nicely because teachers can share students, and we can have very structured times for students within our global programming. At middle school, there's 1 classroom, so that's highly structured. It's 1 teacher with the students all day. And we consolidated our elementary programming because we saw a need for that type of integration so that a teacher could be working in a very structured setting with a group of students and then move to a different group of students, and then they're kind of working together as a team. So in terms of a structured setting, we do have that at our zone schools. And I will say that I've been out to Wilson Aspire several times, and what they're doing is it's being mimicked at the zone school. If a student needs more structure and support, that should be determined by the IEP team. And we have had students move from Wilson Aspire to our therapeutic day setting because of those needs. Did that answer your question?
I'd have to say in part, what I'm hearing is, so just factually, the number of students at Wilson Aspire has gone down by about half. Is that not the number? Okay. And, from my point of view, it wasn't a cost consideration, but more that whatever the original needs were for the program seemed to be going down, and there's no question that zone schools are doing a better job. So I don't think, and I certainly wouldn't have the expertise to question, but I think the concern at the base that I'm hearing is that there are parents that feel that the IEPs, and I know that they are reconsidered, that those IEPs, the implementation of them might be limited at the zone schools versus an environment like Wilson Aspire. And I don't know if there's a way to replicate that, for conditions like autism, where you get in these large environments, and those are students that react adversely to it, from what I understand. And so everything you said seems true, and I'm certainly not questioning that, but it's the accommodation of the parents where that is their concern, is about that environment. Because if we vote tonight, I mean, that's a done deal, right?
I will say, I'm going to comment on your autism statement, is that we don't have global programming for autism at our high school level, that we've been successful with our elementary and our middle school model, that they integrate into instructional level or general ed classes by the time they get to high school.
I guess what I'm going to say is that, one thing I will comment on is that the thoughtfulness of the administration is commendable from my point of view. I don't think that I think sometimes people react to how things were 20 years ago. I mean, that's the way people respond. And it's not 20 years ago. And so I think, from my point of view as a representative, again, being just a layperson, I mean, there's a great deal of thoughtfulness here. I think the catch and the thing that still bothers me is that, is that segment where this might not be reaching, and they're concerned that IEPs would not be implemented in a way that seems to make sense for them. And I think it seems to me that that's the one part of any discussion that if we were to pass this tonight, that I think even if it did, there's going to have to be extra effort to reach out to the folks that have issues with this, I think. This is something where, as logical as it is, sometimes these things are time consuming on getting people to buy in. And I know it wasn't intentional, but we're here. So I just wanted to at least make those comments.
Sure, and I've already been invited to an IEP meeting by a parent that addressed the board.
Mr. Siegel.
And I guess just to put a fine point on that, we had an exchange in emails today regarding IEPs. And across the district, the satisfaction of the IEPs was every bit as high or higher at the zone schools than it was at Wilson Aspire. So, I copied the board, and I think maybe the way my email was presented, it didn't sound super positive, but it was intended to elicit the response that we did get, which was, these are the things that have been done over the last year and a half, 2 years, to improve the defensibility of the IEPs, and then having it broken down by program illustrated that the zone schools are doing a much, much, much better job than they were, and doing every bit as well or better than Wilson Aspire. Did I read that right? Thank you.
Mr. Rollins?
And I guess,
question?
and Ms. Lawrence talked around this, but I think I'd like to put a little finer point on it. We are legally required to educate kids in the least restrictive environment, and we are under scrutiny by federal and state regulators to ensure that we're doing that. They look at our numbers. And so if we're not educating special education kids in the least restrictive environment, that will cause problems for us. And my understanding is that one of the reasons why the number of kids at Wilson has gone down is because we have been doing a better job of putting kids into the least restrictive environment, and that at least part of what's going on here is that we are continuing that process, Did I say anything incorrectly?
Yeah, I'm sorry I was not clear about that. Yes, we put a lot of training in place with our teachers and our staff. One, to write IEPs that reflect the actual student needs and not have the right information in there so that if anyone read that, they would know and understand who that student is and what they need. So that's been part of it, as well as our global programming that we've increased. We have STAR training that you all approved, which I appreciate, 3-year contract with STAR. That's made a tremendous amount of help for our self-contained teachers to be able to work with some of the behaviors that initially got some students to Wilson Aspire. So we're able to hang on to more kids at our zone schools.
Have the coordinator then call the roll on the.
Well, Ken,
Ken? Call it, go ahead.
Sorry. Hey, just for clarification, when I presented this, there was a chart, I think if you remember, it is attached with the colors as to where students would move if Wilson were to close. And the clarification is this, and maybe Ms. Lawrence should just speak to it, but those were availability. Those are places they could move to show that we had place in the district in less restrictive environments. But she was not saying that we were moving each of those students to those placements. It is at the recommendation of the IEP teams after they meet to say what the best placement is for students. So even though everything that we were given was there were seats in the district for all these students, as Ms. Lawrence said a moment ago, some may end up in a therapeutic day setting, but that will be determined by the team, not by her office, but having looked at the IEPs, because she cannot place them as such. Would you tell me if I'm right on that, Ms. Lawrence?
Yeah, I just showed availability of seats across the district.
Okay. Okay, let's have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of the administration's recommendation for Wilson Aspire.
Don't we have to do Mr. Connor's motion first to delay?
Right, the amendment first.
Say that? Oh, the amendment? Okay, well, I'll call the roll on the amendment to delay.
So we're voting.
Oh,
We're
sorry.
voting to delay or not delay the decision.
So a yes is to delay it and a no is to not delay it, or to vote on it tonight.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Siegel,
No.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Stanford,
No.
Mr. Rollins,
No.
Mr. Scrivano,
No.
Mrs. McCulloch.
No.
The motion fails with 5 noes, 1 yes.
Okay, so now, Mrs. Oldley. Right now we need the vote on the recommendation from administration to close the Wilson Aspire program.
Mrs. McCulloch,
Yes.
Mr. Siegel,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
No.
Ms. Stanford,
Yes.
Mr. Rollins,
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano.
Yes,
The motion passes with 5 yeses, 1 no.
thank you. And Mrs. Lawrence, thank you. And Mr. Zediker and Ms. Detman, thank you for your input. Mrs. McCulloch, are there any follow-up items from the committee of the whole that you have for the board?
I do not.
Okay, so we'll now move on to the planning and development items, and the first item is item 6A. That's the memorandum of agreement with the Winnebago County Health Department about the Binax Now testing for rapid COVID results, right? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr.
Second.
Rollins and second by Mr. Siegel. Questions or discussion?
That was me.
Okay.
I seconded it.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay. Mr. Connor, okay. It's the plexiglass. Any comments or discussion on item 6A? Mr. Rollins.
My only question is, as I said at the committee of the whole meeting, this is just the MOU that allows us to administer these tests through an extension of the county's CLIA license. And there's a lot of administration logistics that have to be worked out. Where are we at on working out the logistics? Can anybody Are we moving along on that, I hope?
Yeah, we are moving along on that, as you would hope. We have reached out to Crusader Clinic. We're also exploring staffing, how many locations, how many hours per day, and kind of the extent to which we could handle a volume of testing. So we're putting some plans in place now, and you know, I suppose you're waiting for tonight's vote to ensure that we needed to move forward full steam ahead. But yes, we have been reaching out to partners and looking at some staffing models for how we can do this without increasing cost.
Okay, thanks.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of item 6A.
Ms. Stanford,
Yes.
Mr. Rollins,
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano,
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch,
Yes.
Mr. Siegel,
Yes.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Ms. Rollins, any other follow-up for committee of the whole items?
No.
Okay. We'll now move on to the internal external stakeholder relations committee items. Number 7A is the property transfer to the Northern Illinois Land Bank that was presented by Mr. Phillips. Is there a motion and a second to approve this item?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Mr. Siegel. Any questions or comments or discussion? Seeing none, I'll have the coordinator call the roll on the approval of item 7A, the property transfer to the land bank.
Mr. Rollins,
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano,
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch,
Yes.
Mr. Siegel,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Stanford.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
The next item is 7B, which is the memorandum of understanding with Rockford Promise and the Rockford Public Schools. Is there a motion and a second to approve item 7B?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor.
Second.
Second by Mr. Rollins. Any comments, questions, or discussion? I'll comment. This is pretty exciting stuff. It is. This is one of the biggest deals to happen to Rockford in a long, long time, that we will provide with all the limitations, you know, of Rockford, living in Rockford, having a 3.0 grade point average, free tuition to attend Northern Illinois University. What a great opportunity for the children of Rockford. So that's my comment. I'll have the coordinator call the roll on 7B.
Mr. Scrivano,
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch,
Yes.
Mr. Siegel,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Stanford,
Yes.
Mr. Rollins.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Mr. Siegel, any other follow-up items from Committee of the Whole?
Only the promise of a pulse quickening January committee of the whole meeting.
All right. We're going to hold that to you. All right, so now we get to move on to the Governance Committee, which I chair. First item, these are really exciting items, board policy revisions. So I'll take a motion and a second to approve board policy revision for 2.10. That's the conflict of interest, the wording to address the issues of federal awards contract or conflict of interest. Is there a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Moved by Mr.
Second.
Connor, Mr. Rollins seconds. Any comments or discussion? I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of item 8A.
Mrs. McCulloch,
Yes.
Mr. Siegel,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Stanford,
Yes.
Mr. Rollins.
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
The next item is 8B, which is the policy, board policy revisions for 2.110. This had to do with having an independent person involved if there was a sexual harassment claim of a board member, to clarify that wording. So I'll have a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor. Is there a
Second.
second by Mr. Rollins. Any questions or discussion? Coordinator then call the roll on the approval of the revision to board policy 2.110.
Mr. Siegel,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Stanford,
Yes.
Mr. Rollins.
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano,
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Next item is 8C, which is the revisions to board policy 3.40. This had minor wording changes regarding the correction in the new name for the certification for superintendents in the state of Illinois. Is there a motion and a second to approve this item?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Mr. Rollins. Any questions or discussion? Coordinator, call the roll.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Stanford,
Yes.
Mr. Rollins.
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano.
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch,
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Next item is the revisions to Board Policy 5.130. This had to do with wording updates for HIPAA rules. So is our motion and a second to approve this item?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Mr. Rollins. Any questions or discussion? Mr. Rollins.
I move to correct the acronym, which is still incorrectly spelled in the copy that's posted on board docs.
Is that right? Okay. Okay, thank you.
Does that need a second?
Do we need a second on that?
Second.
No, second? No, she said, Lori says we don't need it. Well, it's already done. It just didn't get, this wasn't posted, okay. So with those revisions, we'll have any comments or questions. Have the coordinator call the roll on the approval of the revisions to Board Policy 5.130.
Ms. Stanford,
Yes.
Mr. Rollins,
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano.
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch,
Yes.
Mr. Siegel,
Yes.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Okay, we get to move on now to the consent portion of our agenda, which include the following items for Performance Monitoring Committee: the payroll, accounts payable, purchase orders, construction pay, request log, the IFB for McIntosh School window replacement project, the West Middle School HVAC upgrades, the architectural services for interior finishes in several buildings, the recurring contracts for math, No Red Ink and Learning AZ, PDSA for systems monitoring and customer support software renewal. The consent item for planning and development was the e-learning plan. The consent item for governance committee was the meeting minutes of November 24th, contract purchase orders, and the freedom of information log. Is there a motion and a second to approve these consent items?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor.
Second.
Second by Mr. Rollins. Are there any consent items that board members wish to have pulled for separate consideration? Seeing none, I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of the consent items.
Mr. Rollins,
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano,
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch,
Yes.
Mr. Siegel,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Stanford.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We are now at the closed session consent agenda items, including the following: the HR organizational report and addendum, and the closed session student discipline cases for the EIAs, the expulsions and abeyance. The one student, 1069, that one was pulled by administration. So the remaining three are for students 8203, 8204, and student 8205. Is there a motion and a second to approve the closed session consent items?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor.
Second.
Second by Mr. Rollins. Are there any closed session consent items that board members wish to have pulled for separate consideration? Hearing none, I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of the closed session consent items.
Mr. Scrivano,
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch,
Yes.
Mr. Siegel,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Stanford,
Yes.
Mr. Rollins.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Okay, now for the most exciting part for tonight. We are on to board member action steps, and I need a motion and a second to approve the Sub-District A selection and administration of the oath of office to Ms. Denise Pearson.
So moved.
Is it moved by Mr. Connor, second?
Enthusiastically seconded.
All right. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, I have the coordinator call the roll on the motion to appoint Ms. Denise Pearson to Sub-District A.
Mrs. McCulloch,
Yes.
Mr. Siegel,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Stanford,
Yes.
Mr. Rollins.
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
All right. Ms. Pearson, will you come to the lectern there and turn the microphone on? This is the lengthiest part of the whole night. All right. I state your name.
Excuse me one moment, please.
You bet. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. I, Denise Pearson,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully discharge the duties
that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of member of the Board of Education
of the office of the member of the Board of Education,
for Rockford School District number 205,
Rockford School District 205,
Winnebago, Boone County, Illinois,
Winnebago, Boone County, Illinois,
in accordance with the Constitution of the United States,
for the Constitution of the United States,
Constitution of the State of Illinois,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the laws of the State of Illinois,
and the laws of the State of Illinois,
to my best ability.
to my best ability.
I further swear that,
I further affirm that
all right, I shall respect taxpayer interests
I shall respect taxpayer interest
by serving as a faithful protector of the school district assets.
by serving as a faithful protector of the school district's assets.
I shall encourage and respect the free expression of opinion
I shall encourage and respect the free expression of opinion
by my fellow board members and others who seek a hearing before the board,
by my fellow board members and others who seek a hearing before the board,
while respecting the privacy of students and employees.
while respecting the privacy of students and employees.
I shall recognize that a board member has no legal authority
I shall recognize that board members has no legal authority
as an individual,
as an individual,
and that decisions can be made only by a majority vote
and
at
that,
a public board meeting.
and that decisions can only be made by majority vote at a public board meeting.
I shall abide by majority decisions of the board
I shall abide by majority decisions of the board
while retaining the right to seek changes in such decisions through ethical and constructive channels.
while retaining the right to seek changes in such decisions through ethical and constructive channels.
As part of the Board of Education,
As part of the Board of Education,
I shall accept the responsibility for my role
I shall accept the responsibility for my role
in the equitable and quality education of every student in the school district.
in the equitable and quality education of every student in the school district.
I shall foster with the board extensive participation of the community,
I shall foster with the board extensive participation of the community,
formulate goals, define outcomes, and set the course for Rockford School District 205.
formulate goals, define outcomes, and set the course of Rockford School District 205,
In Winnebago and Boone County, Illinois.
Winnebago, Boone Counties, Illinois.
I shall assist in establishing a structure and an environment designed to ensure
I shall assist in establishing a structure and an environment designed to ensure
all students have the opportunity to attain their maximum potential
all students have the opportunity to attain their maximum potential
through a sound organizational framework.
through a sound and organizational framework.
Okay. I shall strive to ensure a continuous assessment of student achievement
I shall strive to ensure a continuous assessment of student achievement
in all conditions affecting the education of our children
and all conditions affecting the education of our children
in compliance with state law.
in compliance with state law.
I shall serve as education's key advocate on behalf of students
I shall serve as education's key advocate on behalf of students
in our community schools to advance the vision for Rockford School District 205, Winnebago, Boone County, Illinois.
excuse me,
Yeah, okay.
behalf of our students, community schools, to advance the vision for Rockford School District 205, Winnebago, Boone Counties, Illinois.
You're doing great. I shall strive to work together with the district superintendent
I shall strive to work together with the district superintendent
to lead the school district toward fulfilling the vision the board has created
to lead the school district toward fulfilling the vision the school board has created,
fostering excellence for every student in the areas of academic skills,
fostering excellence for every student in the areas of academic skills,
knowledge, citizenship, and personal development.
knowledge, citizenship, and personal development.
You are officially sworn in, and you may take your seat between Mr. Connor and Mr. Rollins. Welcome. We're
Thank
so
you.
thrilled to have you. Okay, how exciting is that? Absolutely thrilled. We are now on to other business. Are there any board member action steps that are remaining for the board to address? I didn't see any. If there are not, and there are no further comments or agenda recommendations by the board, I'll take a motion and a second to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor.
Second.
Second by Mr. Rollins. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned at 8:15. Thank you all for being here.
Merry Christmas.